Thanks for joining us this evening as we explore the 2016 movie Spectral, otherwise known as...
It's a ghost gem, but not as we know it.
Ooh, yeah, Star Trek. Yeah, this isn't Star Trek at all. This was a 1916... Excuse me, 1960.
Wow, that's
20,
a lot
it's
older
really
than I
old.
thought.
It's black and white. 2016 Netflix movie involving basically spectral-like, ghost-like creatures that are combative. They're very aggressive. They kill. And so it brings up some questions. We're going to delve into this movie. But before I do, I want to talk a little bit about next week. We're going to do something different next week, next Tuesday. We're going to have our first after party movie review. And you're invited. We'll review the 2015 movie, The Martian. And if you get a chance to watch this movie sometime this week or this weekend, we'll review it together. So we really want to get your feedback on this as we're going through this, and this is going to be an interactive experience.
So it's more of a conversation than a strict movie review, right?
Right. We've done real strict movie reviews. We just go step by step, but I think it's going to be more open dialogue with the people in the chat room to talk to them back and forth and see how that goes. I'd really like to be able to get more of that going if we can. So if you get a chance to see that, I want to know what you think about the movie and what Christian themes that you see. And that's really the goal of this channel, is to dig down in and see if we can find a theme that we can use to communicate the gospel to somebody just offhand and say, hey, check this out. But tonight we're going to cover a quick review on the movie Spectral from a theatrical standpoint and a thematic standpoint. We want your opinions on this movie also. We're going to do this as to use this movie as a launch pad to talk about ghosts. And we're going to talk about ghosts from a biblical perspective. Just go through and see what is this? What are they? What are they? Are they in the Bible? What are they talking about with the Bible and stuff like that to get an interpretation of what's going on? All through this live stream, we're going to take comments from you, and we want to get your input. So, synopsis. And we're going to do this synopsis differently than we usually do, too.
3 days ago, we conducted a raid. Men just started falling.
So you see right off the bat, this is set up as it's a military movie. It's combat where you have a new player in the game here. These unknown entities that are just going through.
Basically, this is Call of Duty, but someone's hacking.
Yeah.
Someone's hacking hard,
Yeah, it's
man.
a cheater, bad cheater. They got it on God mode or something, and they're just wiping people out left and right. Pretty much that's it, because it's like a stealth
Wall
thing too,
hacks, invisible. I mean,
right? That's a good way
instant
to think about it.
headshots. I mean, this guy's got all the hacks.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good way to think about it. So I want to know, has anybody here seen this movie? Do you have any comments about it too? Because we're going to give our rating here in a bit, but I'll walk through the trailer just a little bit more to pull out some pieces, some elements of it, so we'll have something to talk about later with this.
We need answers. Fast. At first, our field tech wrote it off as interference.
I don't think you're gonna fly me all the way out here for interference.
In the last few weeks, we've been finding bodies around the city that were killed in the same way.
So right here on this scene, you can see them going through this. The special effects were pretty cool on this. I don't know if I've seen this particular effect before.
This is it's very interesting, very engaging, and thank goodness they answer some questions.
Yeah. Now,
you're not going to walk away from this movie extremely disappointed.
No,
they don't answer anything.
That is a good point.
They address it.
That was a positive about this movie. They do explain it. It does have some explanation. I'm not going to tell you what that explanation is in case you want to be able to check out the movie. We're going to touch on some things here, but I'm not going to get too much into any kind of spoilers as much as we can. So that's why we're checking out the trailer. So as you can see, it looks like maybe a humanoid form that's going extremely fast. And when it makes contact with somebody, let you know they don't make it through the experience.
Look, we work to keep our guys safe, and they need your help.
They're gonna get you close to this thing. It's gonna be up to you to figure out how to stop this.
And so this is another part of it too. The main character is an engineer, and I like that because it's showcasing, hey, you can MacGyver your way through this, kind of have to figure it out. But there's some negatives on that. We'll get into our review here. We're going to talk about in a bit. So any other comments about how theatrically they put this together with the characters? And
I think the characters are great. It's well driven. It's high speed, high impact, lots of violence, not really much gore.
No,
all in all in it, but it definitely has violence. There's no sex, no nudity, nothing like that.
The tech's pretty cool in here too, with what they are able to cobble together later. They've got this. I say one of the things I did like was there's like this, I don't know, Boston Dynamics dog, this robo dog that's in there that looks like it would work out pretty well in a military situation. So I'm going to check out the comments we got. Okay, so we got Is School in here. I don't know if Prowl 32 is around still or not. We want to know what you guys are thinking about. If you saw this, if you had an interest in just seeing the trailer itself, is it something that you would have interest in? And if so, why? If not, why not?
We got Thomas Hall.
Thomas. Okay, so we've got a comment from him. I've grown to love the weird supernatural things because it gives us a touchstone with many non-believers that materialists don't share. Bingo. You're stealing my thunder, but yes, 100%. And we'll dive into this a little bit later too. You're right. This gives us something that we could refer to say, oh, it's like this, but different, or you see a visual example of something that's happening. So it can make sense for them.
What the?
Take the shot.
Did you see that? The bullets went right through it. Tell you when to pull out right now.
So again,
Hacking. Hackers. These got his hitbox to nothing.
okay, we don't like these cheaters on Call of Duty. They go in there and then whatever they're using, they have a special app.
This is Call of Duty VR, and the guy's hacking hard.
That's it. 100%. So yeah, it's you can what's cool about this is you can almost tell what's happening here, but you can't. It has that. We talked about this before in a previous video, the uncanny, and this is one of the things that C.S. Lewis talks about, is that a tiger or a lion in the other room you can have fear of, not wanting to walk in the room if the thing's hungry and voracious. But if there's some kind of specter or ghost or something in the other room, then you have this uncanny dread. And that's what I believe this evokes.
Because you don't know what its limitations are. Now,
Right.
I'll tell you, the show, these things do have limitations. And the show's actually pretty decent about keeping to those, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
It's well balanced.
So Dawa said, I didn't see it. I do like seeing these kinds of stories. And it kind of looks like the people. Yeah. So the super speed looks like it's one of the abilities of whatever this entity has. It has this ability to do this. And as you go through the movie, you see more and more. I'm gonna make this open, and you guys want to see more of the trailer? We just keep on going through this.
Keep on going, reacting to the trailer.
Yeah, let's do that. I was gonna stop. I had to be very careful on.
Oh, we're doing a reaction. They can get over themselves.
Well, I know, but you get automatically hit with these.
Eventually, they realize that what they're doing and stop it once they realize that they keep doing it.
Yeah, I gotta keep it like under 25 seconds, and we're cool.
Units evacuate now! There! Come on! We're in! Go!
Yes, that's something that was interesting with this movie. So this is happening inside an active war zone.
Yes.
So you already have an enemy that's there that you're fighting with. And then you've got this weird thing happening on top of it.
Right.
And you have no clue if they're with the enemy, if they're not with the enemy, whatever's happening. It's very interesting.
And as you saw in this last scene, there's a lot of slow-mo dramatic music that goes with it. I personally thought that was a little over the top, but
That's an action movie.
yeah.
That's to be
It's-
expected.
so we got Christ Opportunidad said, if ghosts aren't real, then what is that noise that keeps coming from my neighbor's house? I bet it's your neighbor
You might need an exterminator.
or another neighbor.
That's true.
Brother, I can't help you with that. I have no idea what's going on over there.
Is there anything that explains what you saw? No.
So they do not have an explanation for this. That's why this engineer is brought in. He's an expert in some things, and he is very good at handling equipment and material and so forth. So yeah, there's tension in that. You've got to find a solution for this right now. And first thing you've got to do is to be able to discover what it is. And that was one of the things I did like about this movie. There's one quote here that said, Fran Madison, there's a female in here, and she's a specialist, a DoD specialist. And she said something kind of far-fetched. And Mark Klein, who you just saw in this last clip, he's the main character, the engineer. He said, I think you're reaching. And she said, in our business, we're required to make suppositions. Klein said, in my business, we're required to prove them. I thought that was a good line. You know, from an engineer, it's like you turn that phrase on its head. It's like someone once said, it is a salesman's job to lie. And I think it's a little bit tongue in cheek with that. It's like, you know, you stretch the edge. I'm not justifying that, but generally salesmen tend to tell you all the good stuff about it and only the good stuff. Whereas it is the engineer's job to tell the truth, the bold-faced truth. And you want that truth. It's like you want your doctor to tell you the truth and not just fudge behind it and not tell you what's really going on.
And I'd say something else that was shown in that last section was this is a Netflix show that they made, and Netflix sometimes hit and miss, but this one I thought it was pretty well done.
And I just want to make a comment real quick. I do not like Netflix. I don't like some of the junk that they've had in there. They've had such bad material originals that they've put out with. I know I might be blacklisting myself as an author, but I don't mind in saying this. So much so that we basically boycotted them, said we're not going to have anything to do with them. But in order to do what we're doing, I have to go this route to see what's available, what's out there. So I'm not necessarily trying to encourage you guys to get Netflix. Thomas Hall said, "Aliens meets Poltergeist." That's probably. So. That's probably okay. You got this. You have the Space Marines.
Definitely the spookiness, the mystery of what's going on. Yeah, I just don't want to confirm nor deny what is actually happening.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You don't want spoiler. Okay, so we are trying to keep.
It may be aliens. It may be of the spiritual stuff. It may be something altogether different.
Yeah, they don't know. They do answer that in the movie.
Yes,
I don't particularly think the answer works. But they do answer it.
Not really.
I think that you and I may disagree on that, which I am totally fine with. I like the disagreements when it comes to this kind of thing. Another comment from Christ Opportunity. I said, if ghosts aren't real, then how do you explain that one romance thriller from the 1990s? Oh, dude, you got me right there. That's
that one.
That one's
one that did it.
What was the name of that one?
It's that one.
Oh, it's not. Was it Ghost? I know what he's. I know what he's talking. Yeah,
I have no clue.
You might have been too young, but
romance thriller.
I think we got the clown in the group there.
I really don't even watch romances to begin with. So
I don't know. Are you real? You know, I answered your question earlier. I am not real. I am a pigment of your inoculation, and we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it at that. Okay, a little bit more on the trailer, and then we'll dive into some more of the analysis.
There's no limit to how far they can spread.
So this is the other part of it too, is that not being able to identify it, you don't know what its weaknesses are, everything you're trying to throw at these spectral things. they just, it doesn't seem to bother them. And their ability to attack is off the charts, right?
Yep.
So that really ups the ante on this story to have the tension there. And this guy's got to find the solution.
I guess the romance, by the way, was literally called Ghost.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I couldn't remember
It's
for
just
sure.
Ghost.
Yeah, for some reason in the back of my mind, I was thinking Footloose, but I know that's not it.
Footloose. Okay.
That's right. Okay, so
Yes, we are live.
yes, we are live. Correct. 150% with all of the warts and everything. It's out there. Any mistakes are 100%. We can't do anything about it. It is what it is. So let's get into a little bit more of the review here. I told you that the two things I liked. The two things I liked was, well, three things. One is some of the special effects. Those special effects were pretty cool, and they did keep you on the seat of your pants. The second one was some of the tech that was in there. I really liked the souped up Boston Dynamics robot dog they had in there. And then that one quote that Klein had to say, "It's my business, we're required to prove these suppositions." I thought that was a good quote, but I'm going to stop because I got a lot of things I did not like about this.
Okay.
What would you
we
say
can dive into
on
those.
positive?
Positive note, I thought that it was well paced. I think the content that was in there, as long as you're aware that, of course, this is war. These are soldiers. You got language. You got violence. You got dead people. Lots of dead people. But no sex, no nudity.
Okay.
Which is always refreshing.
Okay. Nope, that is a positive. Yep. What would you give it? I'm going to go back to the comments here in just a second, but what would you give it as a rating overall from 1 to 10?
Probably like a 7. It's okay, but it's not that great.
I would give it a 4.
You would give it a 4. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Not normally.
No,
but
for me, I don't know if I think I've given one really low rating in all that we've done before. This would give it, and I'll tell you in a few minutes why that is. Going back to the chat, we have Thomas Hall saying, UFO nerds no different than people that used to explain the strange with ghosts and fairies. Extraterrestrials just gives them a materialist framework. Whoa. Okay, a little bit deep. We are going to be going over in 2 days on Thursday morning, doing a live stream in the morning, talking about aliens. Could they be real? What limitations are there from a scriptural standpoint? And not looking so much on the physical side, we talk a little bit about the Fermi paradox and other things like that. And we did have a video previously talking about, would the fact of extraterrestrials disprove God? Would existence of sentient life on other planets disprove the Christian God altogether? And we did talk about that before. I was about to
say, you better limit that to the Christian God, because if you're asking in general, there's a lot of different gods out there.
That's true.
It would definitely disprove.
That's true. And we are going to be getting into Islam and ghosts here in a bit too. So I'm sure you're going to bring that up. Thomas Hall also added, he said, never mind the physics of aliens getting here. Mm-hmm. Well, we're maybe considering that a super advanced species or civilization with maybe a Dyson sphere or something like that can figure out how to break the speed of light barrier and get here faster, right? As Gould said, the trailer looks good. It might be a fun movie. I think it was, except there's some reservations I had. I don't know. Do you guys even want me to say the reservations? Because if you're going to want to watch this, I don't want to keep you. I
don't know what the reservations are.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking there might be a huge negative that might have been explained in some of the weaknesses and stuff. I'm sure you're more familiar with what these things actually are. So
okay.
I'd have to.
But I am going to be speaking in generalities to avoid any kind of problem with spoilers here at all. If ghosts aren't real, they explain why there are ghosts walking around. If ghosts aren't real, they explain why there's ghosts.
Explain why. I'm assuming that
they explain why there's ghosts around walking the street every time when it's Halloween. Oh man, dude, you're blowing holes in my argument. I know I gave candy to at least a couple of those things. I was scared. I didn't have much of a choice. It's like, here, put candy in my bag. What am I supposed to do? There's a witch behind him too. That was awful. Yes, say your reservations, Hi Sherry. Yeah, okay. Then thank
Give
you.
the
Thank you for
download.
the
They can watch it if they
clarification.
want. Spoiler
Okay.
section.
All
Whatever.
right. So let's just dip into the trailer just a little bit more, and then
Okay.
we'll go into some negative parts of this.
Unless we stop them.
Okay. So yeah, it's got some sci-fi special effects, and it's a thriller. It'll keep you on the seat of your pants. But I would say that the writers did not know the U.S. military. They did not know engineering, electronics, or the fact that even the best engineers can't get a USB plugged into a computer correctly the first time. Never. Is flip it over and then flip it over again, and then it goes in. I'm telling you, the best engineers have that problem.
You know, I gave that stuff up on any movie being realistic when every time they do a program, it takes them like 5 seconds to, let me hack
That's
into
true.
the UN
So-
here. 1, 2, 3. I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
okay,
Okay,
guys,
so that's
guys.
that's true
I've
with
thrown
about
that out a long time ago.
that is true. I mean, how quickly does Scotty need to repair the whole ship before the next episode? So yes, that has been a long
That
time.
kind of just like.
Well, I think
assumes
this
things like
took it
that's
to
gonna
an
happen.
extreme with this, though, because all right, again, I don't want to get into too much of the spoilers, but you have he mentions that these are these ghost-like critters, whatever they are, these entities. He uses what's called a hyper spectral camera. More powerful version was used in the helmets of these guys. So these guys have these on their goggles for their helmets. So they put these down almost like night vision, and they can see because the camera used in these night vision goggles sees more light than what's there. So what exactly is that talking about? He says this sees more in the spectrum of light, like what, X-rays?
I'm assuming that's what it is.
Gamma rays, or is
X-rays,
this
gamma rays.
expanding it out? Microwaves. Remember, all these different things: X-rays, gamma rays, microwaves, radio waves, all what's used for Wi-Fi. Those are all part of the electromagnetic spectrum, right? And just as a refresher, I'm going to put that up. Okay, so we're looking at the electromagnetic spectrum, and visible light is just a minuscule section of that whole broad thing. So if you go one direction, you go up to the top of the screen on this, you're getting your wavelength is getting squished together more and more and more, and it's more energetic to do that. That's why X-rays are dangerous. Gamma rays are extremely dangerous because they will cut right through you and cause problems with your body, And if you spread it out more and more, well, radio waves, microwaves, and stuff like that, that's non-ionizing radiation. That's not going to cause as many problems. But you can see, I'm looking at this and say, okay, what part of this wavelength are these specters that they're looking at? Are they emitting or reflecting electromagnetic radiation? So you have a radio that picks these guys up?
It would just be static, I would assume.
Okay, and if it's on the blue end of the spectrum, there's something else, and it's easy enough. Anybody can. It's not like he's got this really special camera that he can see this. It didn't make any sense to me for that. So
I do have a question for you.
yes,
The weakness that is given in this, which is the metal filings. It's one of the weaknesses of these
that might be a
things.
spoiler.
That's fine. Because it's critical to the entire thing. Is it because they're ferrous?
Well, ferrous is another word for iron.
Iron, I know. Because they're magnetic.
Maybe there's a lot of things. Okay.
If it's yes, then they've screwed up from the beginning of the movie, and this drops it down to a -2.
Well, okay. So, all right. I'm not going to say much more than that because that would be a spoiler. But I agree that there is another issue with that I'm not going to bring up.
If that is the case, they mentioned at one point that they shot these with armor-piercing rounds and nothing happened.
Uh-huh.
The armor-piercing rounds they're talking about have a hardened steel core.
Okay.
And if that is the case, something would have
Okay,
happened.
steel is a ferrous alloy. It has iron and carbon mix. So yeah, that would do it.
It would have caused issues where in the movie nothing happened, so they didn't know what bullets they were actually shooting at.
Okay, I'm gonna check. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm gonna check the comments here. We got USBs are ultimately boss. And then Thomas Hall said, looks like another movie written by gamers. It's the issue with CGI. They'll do the art first, then work on the story around it. Big snooze on plot and character.
I do admit I don't know, the characters weren't that bad.
Yeah, if you're looking,
Well, I don't know if there was much character change.
So whenever it's very difficult when we're rating a movie like this because it might be your cup of tea. It's like looking at some of the older Godzillas. A bash 'em up might be your cup
Yeah,
of
if
tea.
you're just looking for Godzilla beat the crap out of something, okay.
Yeah.
Godzilla and the last one that just came out that we did a review on, Godzilla X Kong.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that's what you want. You want to see big monsters fighting each other. You want to see character development, you go see Godzilla -1.
Godzilla -1 was definitely more in that territory. So yes, and I thought that was a very well done movie, and we both gave it. I believe both gave
We
it. a 10
gave
on
it,
this.
I think, yeah, or no, I think I gave it a 9.
Okay,
But it's really,
that was well done. So it really does depend on what you're looking for. Isgul said, "Is it like using infrared goggles?" And I would say that's what it's like. It's either you're on one end of the spectrum or another. So if you're just talking about electromagnetic radiation, we've got that covered. We already have the tech for that. That's not a surprise. Now, maybe if it was like, tachyon or what's the other one? Neutrino emissions or something like that. That'd be something totally different, but not for this. Okay, so Prowl 32 said, one time I put on a ghost costume to scare away some old man so I can have his property, but then some meddling kids came their dog to find out. This is true. I've seen this on TV. It is 100% correct. Many times. And he would have gotten away with it too. All right. So Isgul said, I could have. Okay. So we got some really bad characters in the chat. Sherry says, I'm getting the sense that it's harder for you as an trained engineer to suspend disbelief. Yes, it is. But you know what? If you're an historian, think about going to watch, I don't know, Napoleon or something like that, which from what I understand, I didn't see it. It was supposed to be really bad. But a historical movie, and you'd probably just say, no, this is not even close to what happened. It'd be difficult for you to watch. So yeah. All right. So basically there's some other things like that. I got some other parts, but this guy, what's bothering me about this is that this guy the main character can build anything out of duct tape and PVC better than MacGyver himself.
How about I say his last name is MacGyver, so we're all good.
No, it wasn't.
It should have been.
It should have been, yeah.
It should have
But
been. That would have been
think
funny.
about it.
That would have made this a comedy. That would be great. That would have really made
It
this
took
video
Tony
better.
Stark weeks or months to create the first Iron Man suit in a cave. And this guy does it in hours or days to pull all this stuff together that's there. So that was smart. You know that going in, you suspend your disbelief. Okay, whatever. Take your popcorn, enjoy the movie. Go for it.
I still think this was better than the last one we did with the we'll send one ship to go get the worst terrorist in history movie.
Oh,
That
you're
was
talking
still
about
tactfully
Rebel Moon?
Horrible. No, not Rebel Moon. There's a new one there's a new
No, I'm not
part
wasting
two.
my time with that.
I figured it was a waste
Yeah.
of time considering I didn't even hear anything about it from the people who made it.
And he said,
They gave up.
So Thomas Hall said, I found John's kryptonite. Yes, indeed. Keep it away from me. And then we have, I'm not an engineer, but I do like my sci-fi to be hard sci-fi too. I'll tell you what. So I have some time traveling stuff in my sci-fi. And I did my best to say, if you could travel in time, what mechanism would you use? And there's a guy from Caltech. He was a professor at Caltech. Kip Thorne was his name. I think he's still alive. He came up with a method. I'm not going to say what it is because it would take way too long and we'd lose everybody in the chat room. But basically, using wormholes and special theory of relativity, you can create a time machine. Unfortunately, Stephen Hawking came around and talked about Kip Thorne's theory and said he couldn't do it because you have radiation feedback. But you can try. You can try, and not just some hand waving. Try to make it look good. So we have, yep. All right. So I want to move on from this. When we have this movie, we want to frame it to say this is what the movie was about. This is what's happening and everything. And now we look at the thematic review of it. What themes are in this movie that we can use as a message or a springboard to talk about the gospel? Say, hey guys, here it is. Just like Jesus spoke about parables, we use parables to bring forth kingdom principles. We can look for certain things in popular movies, although this one wasn't particularly popular for this. Here's the question. What is in here that you can use that is a theme for this? Did you find any?
Not very much, other than the value of human life. I think would be the end all that I would take from it, because one side was willing to sacrifice human life to obtain victory in such a way that was a horrendous act. The other side wanted to preserve life as much as possible, including that of their soldiers, even if it meant sacrificing a strategic value.
Okay. All right. So that's a good one. The value of human life. The only thing other than courage, which is in most movies, I found no other Christian themes in Spectral. In the movie, reference was given to the entities of possibly being souls of the dead trapped between life and death that can't move on. Now, I'm not going to say what was really the situation in the movie, if that was the case that was in the movie or not, because it's a spoiler, and they do explain what the real situation was. But that was one of the ideas that was thrown out is, hey, maybe these could just be basically dead people, the ghosts that are going around and doing this, because this is a war-torn area. Such a concept, though, about dead being trapped between this realm and the next, they don't have a place to go, they're kind of wandering spirits, is a concept prevalent in our society, even among Christians, but it is not Christian theology. And this is the movie's greatest strength. How can that be the greatest strength? And somebody already mentioned, I forgot who mentioned it here in the chat, but he said, it can be the greatest strength because it can be used as a launch pad for a conversation about Spiritism and what the Bible says about it. So, with that in mind, let's take a deeper look at that. What are they? Ghosts. Let's do some definitions. I had somebody in an earlier chat challenge me to say, hey, it depends on what you mean. The poll that I put out to do that. And I'm going to see, I didn't prepare the poll. We do have a poll on our community page. You can go out and look at it. I was very surprised that at one point it was a 70-30 split between those who said that ghosts are real. 70% said yes, and 30% said no. And I think it started moving more towards the 60-40 part. I haven't checked it recently to see where it is. But I was surprised that many people said that ghosts are real. What is the definition of a ghost? Well, let's start off with what the Bible says about it. Really, other than the name, the Holy Ghost, which talks about the third person of the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, which is another name for him. There really are no ghosts in the Bible. What is a spirit then? Because we do talk about spirits. So I'm going to put that out to you guys in the chat to say, let's see if we can nail down these definitions. What is a ghost? What is a spirit? And what is a soul? Because is that the same as a spirit? Is that different? What are the definitions? So I do have a definition for spirit and soul, but not so much for ghosts. The definition of a spirit is, if you look in the Bible, that is generally used for breath. In the New Testament, the Greek word is pneuma, where we get like pneumatics or pneumonia from. It is the breath. This is the idea of the breath of God. In Genesis, God breathing in. He takes the dust, forms Adam, and then breathes into Adam, and that's what gives him life. We can see the last breath that we have Jesus giving up his spirit and breathing his last. So there's a lot of those two things that are combined. Of course, we need to have respiration to be able to live, so that goes with it. You can't, if you don't breathe, hold your breath long enough, you're not going to be around. You're going to lose your spirit, right? So then there's also the definition of souls. Sherry has a comment. It says, is this time to discuss the calling up of Samuel by King Saul? That is in my notes, and it is on the list. So yes, we will be talking about that in just a minute. But let's go over some definitions here first before we do, unless you want to use that as a means to define. Use that story with Saul and the witch of Endor. I was going to have a picture of an Ewok and put it up on here and say, this is the witch of Endor. So spirit, and then the idea of soul. If you look at the passages that in the New Testament that have both spirit and soul in, they seem to be, some of the passages they're used almost interchangeably, but in other cases it is not. Spirit seems to be that part of us that God breathes into us, and the soul can be looked at as being our mind, will, and emotions. And so that soul part, that's almost like the consciousness of the human mind. And to this day, we have a hard time defining what consciousness really is. We're talking about on the scientific level, it goes beyond our understanding. Maybe 20 years from now, they'll have a good solid definition for it. But right now, it remains elusive. So spirit is what God breathes in, and then the soul. So you have, there's a dichotomous view and a trichotomous view in the Bible. A dichotomous view is spirit and body, spiritual and physical, but both are a part. We're both that. We really do not work well one without the other. And then the trichotomous view is body, spirit, the breath of God, and soul, mind, will, and emotions there that are impinging. So it's really not. It's not really so much of a cut and dry thing in the New Testament, looking at the differences between these two. But it is good to know these definitions. Nowhere though is it talking about ghosts. So my question to you guys is, where does ghost fall into this spirit body thing, or spirit and soul thing, if at all? So taking a look at Thomas Hall said, this is where etymology makes a difference. Ghost comes from the Germanic side of English. Spirit is from Latin. The original meaning used to be the same. Thus, Holy Ghost was proper. Good point. Yep. Good point. I did not know that. So, yeah, you'll have that often in.
Oh, English is a mess.
It is.
I've had plenty of Muslims tell me, you can't really understand Arabic because it's just such a complicated language. And I'm like, have you looked at the history of English? How many words for things do we have?
Yeah.
We have so many.
Yeah.
It's hodgepodge.
Yes. And all sorts of different spelling rules that go with it. So that's that, Thomas, I'm going to put your comment up here again. This is a very good point, showing those differences. So in that way, if we're looking at it from that regard of ghost and spirit somehow being synonymous, maybe if you have a Venn diagram or something like that, where you have the two definitions, they're largely overlapped between those two. Maybe there is a nuance now between the definitions and not. Isgul said, but over time, the English word ghost changed meaning. It now means the soul or spirit of a dead person. Okay, so if it specifically means that's a good point. So it's an unattached spirit or soul, depending on how you view it, of the body. So, I guess the question is, can you have spirits or ghosts of people running around, dead people specifically, running around doing things on the earth? So what does the Bible say about that?
We have the two references.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you will pull up one, which I really like because it's kind of funny.
Okay, so yeah, let's go. Sherry mentioned this earlier, and this is what happened to Saul in The Witch of Endor. The reference is 1 Samuel 28, 7 through 20. I'm not going to put this up because the reference is so long, but basically the idea is Samuel. Oh gosh, no, I didn't. Eli, right? Eli was the prophet that Samuel was used to be. That Saul was used to using beforehand. He passed away. King Saul is in a bad place. He needs some advice. So he goes to a medium and said, do what you can to get a hold of my dead prophets. I need some advice. And lo and behold, Samuel speaks. Or at least it appears that Samuel speaks.
Well, I would say that it's a
scholars are
of the
mixed both
future.
ways. What's that?
It is a prophecy of future that is given. It is a holy individual who is shown to reappear. On top of that, I'd say based upon the reaction of the witch.
Yeah, she's like,
what the heck's happening?
She was surprised it actually pulled off. It's like, this is unusual. I usually don't do this.
So probably in her mind, it was like, oh, it's a normal day of the office. It's going to be hocus pocus. It's going to be, I'm going to make some smoke come up and, shake a little bit. Oh, he's talking through me and this is what's going to happen. She gets all ready for that and poof, he actually appears. Holy cow.
Okay, so we got the
Time for a
idea there,
drop
and it seemed to have been a one and done situation that was it. Of course, you do have the transfiguration too, where Moses and Elijah then are speaking to Jesus, but it doesn't necessarily say they're disembodied, right?
Right.
Because we don't know what happened to the body of Moses. We don't know what happened to the body of Elijah. Elijah was taken away.
Yep.
Right. So those could have been. And then you have a long list of people that were resurrected in the Bible. The widow's son in Zareph in 1 Kings 17. The Shunammite's son in 2 Kings 4. The man thrown into Elijah's grave. Jairus' daughter. Lazarus. Jesus himself, Tabitha, in Acts chapter 9, and it goes on. There are many. There's at least a dozen, maybe even more resurrections spoken in the Bible. But here, I'm going to throw this question out at you guys: what is the difference between resurrection and a ghost appearance? Put that in. I'm going to, while I'm waiting for an answer for that, I have Sherry has a comment. So the disciples offered Moses and Elijah a place to stay. Sounds like a physical body type. That's a very important distinction. Yes. I will say, just go ahead and say right off the bat what the difference is. In a resurrection, you don't have a disembodied spirit. You obviously have a body associated with a spirit. So what about what's going to happen to us in afterlife? And Isgul, I see you got a comment here that I want to respond to in a minute. But in the afterlife, we in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it talks about us having resurrected bodies. So we were designed from the very beginning not to be bodiless entities, and even when we're reunited with Christ, there is the concept of having a body, resurrected body there with us. I'm going to get to you here in a second, but I wanted to look at a couple of these. Samuel wasn't a spirit residing on earth. That's the crime Saul was committing, was attempting to bring spiritual into our world. Yes, and it was a crime, and he did suffer for that too. Isgul, so I know. And the worst part of it is I said all these different booby traps we were talking about. Scooby-Doo again. Okay. So I want to get back to something that right here to make sure it's the right one. So I believe that Davos is responding to this is an older comment. So I believe you're responding to something that was asked earlier about disembodied spirits being ghosts. You said that depends on your view of what happens after we die. So we're going to take a look at a couple of verses here, and we can debate this going back and forth and see what happens to them. Okay, so let's do that right now. Before I do want to mention, this is out of Deuteronomy 18:19 through 14. It says, when you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. There shall not be found among you any who burns his son or daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer or a medium or a necromancer or one who inquires of the dead. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. It's interesting that was put on the same level as sacrifices to Molech, which was the burning
Burning kids
of children.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
So, and here is we'll get to your point here in just a minute. But why is this so bad in God's sight that He would put that on the same level as child sacrifice, to say that don't do these things? Now, maybe child sacrifice could have actually been worse, but He's saying it's on the same list that was going there. This kind of consulting the dead, the divination, and things like that. Why was that so bad? And just like most things, I'm sure it's you guys are gonna answer the questions here in a minute. So I'm gonna keep on rolling along as you're getting that answer out. Thomas Hall said, my take is most likely ghosts are the demonic. Will really, yes, I would say probably mostly 100%.
99.
Yeah, well, it
sure.
Depends, because there's a lot of hoaxes out there too.
Oh, there's a lot of hoaxes. Yeah, I was talking about true.
Okay.
I was talking about if there's actually something like that occurring. I'm 99% sure it's probably demonic in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that is. Now, of course, you got the hoax part. If it's a hoax, then it wouldn't have fallen into that category at all. It's a hoax is stupid.
Correct. So
no Scooby-Doo.
So Davos is cool. You had mentioned what it depends on. The concept of ghosts being trapped on this world before they go on to the next one, which would be heaven or hell. It depends on what we believe the view of the role the spirit is, or what happens after we die. And so let's take a look at Hebrews 9:27. It says, just as it is appointed for a man once to die, and after that comes judgment. So, and to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. How soon that happens is the question. There is no indication throughout Scripture of the thousands of years that it covers that anything else happens otherwise. That it's you are like the Lazarus and the rich man. There was a place that they had gone to. It was not somewhere on earth wandering around. There is no indication ever of that type of thing happening. So I think probably for absence that would be done, plus the verse of to be absent from the bodies, to be present with the Lord, is enough to say that there's not spirits wandering around. If somebody else wants to chime in with that, I'd appreciate it. Sherry says, lack of trust in God by wanting to consult something other than God. You had a point?
Yeah, no, I agree.
So this was the question that I was asking earlier about why God wants it. Another thing too is, and this is something that started happening with Israel, and you see this happen with missionaries in India as well. When Israel's in their later history, before, and we're talking about the northern kingdom of Israel, they started to mix gods of the Canaanite gods and gods of the region with Yahweh. They started creating their own pantheon. They had the high places of worship, and you can see a progression. The high places up in the mountains then became in the city, and then from the city they became part of the temple complex, that they were as a part of worship with Yahweh and these others. And so what happens is, if God does anything of his manifestation, any kind of working, any kind of communion with Israel together, whether it's blessing or there's a curse because there's something here, he's not the one that gets credit for it. It gets spread around to these others, and you get this kind of idolatry happening with God. You imagine if you're married and you have a spouse, and that spouse starts mixing your relationship and giving other people the same thing that he or she would give you, then that relationship is pretty much dead, and you no longer have that going. And it's extremely important on two cases. One is the individual level, and then there's the corporate level with Israel and God, because God was using Israel as a way to bring forth the Messiah. And without them actually following him the way that they were told to, it would mess the whole thing up. So he says, you guys cannot do this. You can't mix this up. It's like you're cheating on me, basically. And it ruins the whole thing. So Davos mentioned, I think that God is against speaking with the dead because it opens us up to deceiving spirits that lead us away from the living God to dead gods and horrible actions like the pagan systems of the past. And one of those systems was Moloch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah, one on the list.
And Asherah was another. They had temple prostitutes. These are fertility goddesses that if you do these things just right, then your crops will be better. And since they were in agrarian society, that having crops or their herds produce more was huge for them. So another one is another verse that we look at is Acts 16, verses 16 through 19. Paul delivered a girl from a spirit of divination, she was raking money in for her exploiter. She was 9, maybe 12, maybe 14. I don't know. I don't know if we really have an age
refer to her as a girl?
Yes.
As a young girl?
I don't remember.
Okay.
So
she would have been before the age of puberty then.
Okay. She was following Paul and us. It says, this is a quote out of Acts 16. She was following Paul and us, crying out, "These men are servants of the Most High, who proclaim to you the mighty way of salvation." Now, you would think that, okay, this is free advertisement, right? She can, but she kept doing this for many days. And finally, Paul said, "Come out," because it was getting to a point where it's really causing problems.
Yeah.
And Paul cast the demon out of her because it was a demonic influence there that was causing problems to his ministry. And then, of course, the guys that were using her as a way to get money, they were exploiting. No, they weren't. And then they caused a problem in the city, and they threw Paul, all kind of stuff. So there's an example of a lying spirit. You also have lying spirits in 1 Kings 22, verses 22 and 23, and in 1 Timothy 4:1. So there's plenty of other cases where demonic spirits, lying spirits, would come in and take a place, and they could easily, I would say, we do see them manifest, and they could be the ghosts as well. So yes, Sherry in his school, I think that's 100%, 100% correct. So I think that when you look at all these scriptures, it doesn't appear that after you're dead that there's body, unless you guys can give me a really clear either example in scripture or a verse that's going to show me otherwise. And I'm open to hearing if there's something else there. I've not seen it. I've not, no one's shown it to me before to say that there is a point where you're kind of in between before you go to heaven. God has you to do some things here as a spirit or whatever. I mean, there's some cool stories about that, but ultimately they're nothing. And if anything, God says to stay away from that type of thing. So one last comment. Oh, here we go. Paul in Philippians 1:21 through 23 implies that after the resurrection, Christians go to be with Jesus. After the resurrection. So are you saying that there's something in between that happens? And while you're putting that there, I was going to go ahead. You got a comment?
Yes, I do. Story comment.
Okay.
But I guess that would have to do with the perspective of time. If they're outside of time, then progression events wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
So that would be
okay. So
you would die if you go outside of time at that point to where God is. Then it's all happened.
Okay.
It would look instantaneous to you and just wake up and it'd be the end.
Correct. And I think that you just, Davos, you just clarified here in Paul in Philippians 1:21 through 23 implies that after the resurrection, Christians will go to Jesus when they die.
When they die. Yep. You die, you go there.
That all important.
Go in between.
That all important phrase there. Yes. Yes. Thomas said the disciples thought Jesus might be a ghost when walking on water, but that doesn't mean that their superstition was correct.
True.
Yes. Yes. They had a lot of misconceptions, and that could be thrown in as one of them, not necessarily gospel truth.
And that's the difference between the inspired word of God and recording down events that happened, and not like direct word of God, where it's like God's directly telling you, this is from my perspective. I thought he was a ghost. No, humans thought he was a ghost.
We got a couple of really good comments here. One is Sherry saying, how do you feel about near-death experiences? Seems to indicate that there is no wandering around the earth state. I try to avoid near-death experiences. I don't know about
it's not a habit of mine.
It's on your to-do list.
Yeah,
but
I'll get there eventually.
I don't know how well we can trust them. I guess if I had an experience myself, it's like, okay, it's on my list. Sort of like ghost stories. I'm not sure. They're just how reliable are they?
Oh, I got a ghost story for you afterwards.
Okay. I'm asking for ghost stories here from people here in the chat too. What happens after we die and before our resurrection is called the intermediate state in theology. Okay, so this is something that maybe I need to look that up a little bit more too. I have a systematic theology book that I used in college that I was doing some research in a little bit earlier, and maybe I'll use that phrase to do a little bit more digging. But you brought up something that we were talking about earlier, and that is the difference in time.
Yes.
Okay, so just as early in classical physics, time was viewed as being a constant, and Einstein came around and said, the problem with speed of light is that time is not a constant. And once you realize that time is not a constant, then having the speed of light as a constant, it works. Because it's a velocity, distance divided by time. If it's a constant, then it's the time that changes. And in the same way, we can look at time being variable within either the spiritual realm, within heaven, and then what happens to us after we die too. That we are on a linear two-dimensional time scale here on Earth, and it may be very different in the spiritual realm. We have either three-dimensional, four-dimensional, multi-dimensional time that's beyond our comprehension. That may be one reason why when John was looking into heaven, he had a vision in Revelation about in heaven. It's like some of this stuff does not make sense. And you're talking about the cherubim being beautiful. That doesn't sound beautiful to me. That sounds really crazy. How it's all come together. Nightmarish, yeah. So I think there are aspects that are beyond our comprehension there that we just don't know. But that can be kind of a cop-out to what you're saying, is that there's an intermediate state. We just say, oh, well, time doesn't really matter because time's different there. Well, what happens? You do have the in Revelation, you do have the martyrs that are under the altar. They're saying, how long, O Lord? Right? That they're waiting.
How long do we wait for our blood to be paid back? Right.
So there is some of that's going on. So as far as what you're saying, Sherry, I don't know. That is a question for me. I never really looked deeply into that. And maybe we'll have a live stream on that, but that's really reaching out of my territory. I don't know. Isabel said, what happens after we die and before our resurrection is called the immediate. Okay, sorry. You already said that. I already clicked on it. Today you will be with me in paradise, Jesus said immediately. That's what matters. I'm less concerned about the how.
Yep.
Okay. That works.
And that would be clear proof that there is not like you're not wandering around here. It's like, okay, you're coming with me.
Now, was that just for him?
That's the other
There's
question.
the other thing there too. So
was that a direct message, or was that a general statement?
Yeah,
sort of concept.
Yeah, and I don't think so. You could look at the thief on the cross as a real guidelines for soteriology, which is the theology of salvation. Is what are the guidelines for it? We don't have a whole lot of cases where Jesus said, "You're going to heaven, you're going to heaven, and you're going to heaven." but he definitely did say it's a thief on the cross.
Yep.
And as the knight in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade said, "You have chosen wisely." Okay, Thomas Hall said, much like necromancy, I don't think we're meant to know a great deal about the other side until we are there. I'm there's something you said about just faith in God, just going with that, right? So let me turn this around a little bit. And I have this section, then we'll do a wrap up. I want to talk about next week also. We really do want to see if we can pull this together and having this after party thing. If it works out well, we'll just keep doing it, but we got to see what works and what doesn't. Ghost stories. I want to know if any of you have any ghost stories to share. And these could be, I don't know if these can necessarily be explained away, but so far we're looking at saying that there's really only two sources for this type of stuff, and they're not actual ghosts. And we talked about, and we'll talk about that in the wrap up again too, what those two sources are. So I'm curious to see.
While we're waiting for anyone to give that, I'll give mine.
Okay. You
So
yes.
this one, it's weird. This one's weird. And I've had demonic, and I've had dealt with that side of it, as well as having voice of the Lord in my head, or hearing the voice of the Lord. This one was weird. And I put this in, I don't know what category. It's just that I don't know what. But it happened when I was younger. I was staying down at my grandparents. My grandparents have an old house. I was staying down there with my cousin. At the time, we're playing card games. I love staying down with my grandparents because they would just let me stay up to whenever I wanted, right? Grandparents spoil you rotten. So we're like 2:30, 3 a.m. We're playing this card game together out on the living room, and right next to their living room is their kitchen. Man, it's all dark because no one else is up. Everyone's upstairs in bed. There's no way to get to the kitchen without going by where we're at, or at least a place that we would clearly see. So we're just sitting there minding our own business, doing this, and we just hear out in the kitchen, I'm not kidding, just a plastic, it sounded like someone took a plastic cup and slammed it down into the kitchen. Now, we were just in there prior getting drinks, and we were actually even playing on the table beforehand, so it was all cleaned off. So we went back out there, and there's a cup in the middle of the table, and I have no clue. It was weird. I wouldn't put that in the demonic section because I can't see why. I mean, if that was all the demonic thing wanted to do, okay, well.
Well, okay, so from a demonic standpoint, if it draws you away from God, if it draws you away from Christ, he has accomplished his goal, right? And if there's the fascination with the occult that gets you involved in it, and you get more into spiritism and stuff like that, then it could be that.
It was a failed start then.
Okay,
it didn't
for you.
work on me, it didn't work on my cousin.
Okay.
Though my cousin still remembers it because he brought it up not too long ago.
Really?
He was like, oh, yeah, this was creepy as all get out. I was like, yeah, I know. I was there.
All right. So we got one from Thomas. He said, my neighbor just said the people that moved into her brother's house kept seeing someone of his description. Her mom blames herself for her son's overdose. I told her I don't know about the ghost. But mom forgiving herself is the key issue. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I don't want to just chalk it up to psychologic, but I wonder how much there is of that.
There's that. I guess, and relating it to my story, I guess I would have chopped that up to just being tired, considering we were up so late. If I was the only one that was there. But I have a hard time being like, yeah, we both, because we heard it, we both went out at the same time.
Yeah.
Just to investigate because we were the only ones up. Everyone else was dead asleep.
So this one is interesting. I'm just going to look at this again real quick. My neighbor said that people had moved into her brother's house, keep seeing someone of his description. And that would freak me out.
That freaked me out too.
Especially if you're there alone. Yeah, my kids always were afraid of our basement until they got to a certain age, and it never It's like, I don't care. It's no big deal. It's just a basement. Her mom blames herself for her son's overdose. So that must have been the person that they was talking about. I told her, I don't know about the ghost, but mom's forgiving herself is a key issue. I would say definitely that is
a key issue. You can only, for your kids, you can only control so much. They have to make.
But that's with her, and they're not
seeing it.
They're not responsible for her son's death. They're moved into the place, right?
I don't know. It counts on how it happens. If they saw something and then they explain it, saying, "Oh, well, we saw this like man-shaped thing," and then she asks, "Well, do you have this shirt on?" Yeah, I guess so. You could get that going on, but without knowing the exact details.
So I will say this one thing. I don't know if this is kind of related to it or not, but it appears that demonic possession and this type of spiritual stuff seems to happen more in third world nations than in Western or the U.S.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes.
And so the question is why? And we could look at it from the demonic possession standpoint. And I think the answer might be partially in CSO. So you could look at it and say, well, we're so much more enlightened. We don't need to do that. And I think that's probably the reason why demons don't do it in the U.S. Not that they're afraid of it. It's just that they have different methods of
they're not idiots.
Controlling, exploiting, and that is with science. They would break that veneer if they did the other too much. In Screwtape Letters, Screwtape mentions this in one of his letters. It's really good about it. It's too much to talk about right now, but we did talk about another.
Long story short, the enemy's not an idiot.
The enemy's not an idiot. Okay, we got another story here.
With that.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a follow-up with Thomas. Is right. People that moved there never met the son. They gave a description that matched. That would be really freaky. That is really freaky. That does not look like a psychological.
No,
I don't think you can explain that away as psychology. Yeah, unless it's just a generic enough description. But even then, I don't know. So my great uncle once told me that he was alone in his parents' house. This is where it all starts, right? Don't be alone in your parents' house. The house he grew up in, and he saw a shadow move through the house and turn on the bathroom taps. He trimmed them off and went to, I can tell you're Canadian because that's some of the terms, went to his kitchen. 5 minutes later, it happened again, and he was so scared, Ryan ran down to the street to his older sister's house.
I can see why.
Yeah, he ran. Okay, he ran down to his sister's house. So you had the description. Yeah, I don't know, because that could be a psychological thing. But if you actually see that happen, what's the point of it?
Prayer.
Definitely.
That's why my knee-jerk reaction. Pray.
Both of those situations can engender fear. I think that's a general emotion.
I'd say even in my story,
yeah,
it's still fear. It still generates fear because of what just happened. Why did we hear this loud sound all of a sudden and no one else is up?
Yeah,
it gets creepy, fiery. That's the only thing that would be a comment.
So whose camp is that in? Is that now there is fear of the Lord, but that's more respect of God. You understand. It's like if I come into if I'm working on a substation, I walk in and it's live and we're talking high voltage. You can have an arcing situation going on. You have a real respect for the environment, and you've got to be certain. You've got to be careful what you're doing because you could lose your life. We need to be that way around God, but it's not like, I don't know. It's not the same level of fear.
Well, you see every time in the Bible, you see this quite a bit. Whenever an angel shows up, a lot of times they just simply say, "Fear not."
Yeah,
fear not.
Right.
Fear not. They're trying to put at ease. But then you see other situations where clearly demonic, even when they are in angel garb, they show and they create fear for a purpose. They start choking you while demanding that you read, even though you're saying you're not really learned. These sort of things happen, and you look at that and saying, see that?
I think you're talking about a specific circumstance.
Very much so.
So this might be, I'm going to see if there's any other comments here. This might be a good segue. okay, so this is Isgul said, yes, perfect love drives out fear. So you will have that type of petrified dread, I can't breathe type of fear, not the respect for I'm in this circumstance and I need to be careful what I'm doing because I could cause some serious problems. That's different. So your Islam, okay, so Islam and
Yeah, the choking thing was an Islam reference.
yes, Islam and Spiritism. So take it away, your brother in Christ.
Oh, it's just so much different. It's a different mindset. So you have in Islam, you do have, I'm not sure of so much of the ghost concept because I'm thinking of the concept you go into the grave, you die, you go into the grave where you're tormented by angels until the day of resurrection, and then goes from there.
How about jinn?
Jinn that's where I was going to go. The jinn. Now that's completely different because you have angels, you have demons, and then you have jinn. And it's kind of like an in-between.
Yeah, that
thing.
is not in the Bible.
That's not Christian theology. That's definitely out of the pagan ideologies. You see, again, over and over again with the Hadith, you see Muhammad being very pagan in his roots, in his beliefs. He's very fearful in a lot of cases. He's afraid of a thunderstorm coming in. He's afraid because it could be evil. There's a solar eclipse that happens when his son passes away. There's a solar eclipse, and he runs to the mosque with his clothes dragging behind him to start praying because he's, again, driven by fear. There's another one where I've used this a lot, not for this point, but for what he did afterwards. Is he basically went out one evening late at night, and Aisha, his child bride, followed him out, and Muhammad saw her shadow, and it scared the crap out of him, and he ran back in as fast as he could. She had to run back in, but she wasn't supposed to leave at all. So she had to get back to her bed as fast as possible. So he ran back, she ran back. It scared the crap out of him so much that he basically addresses her, says, "Hey, was it you that I saw out there? Was it your shadow that I saw?" And she's like, "Yeah, I was out there." And then he proceeds to beat her enough that she remembers, and in fact, according to her account, caused her great pain, or caused her enough pain that she remembered it so many years later. So either way, yeah, there's a lot of the superstition, a lot of, I mean, even how you declare the Quran. There are sections of the Quran that you have to say in just the right way, and then it'll protect you against evil spirits. It'll protect you against black magic. Black magic was a thing. Muhammad was cursed. Black magic was used on Muhammad. He was possessed for a while. He gave satanic verses because Satan whispered them into his ear while revealing them, and then Allah figured that he would catch it later and just never got around to it until people started calling him out on it. And then he got a revelation.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and it gets really deep, and we could probably spend the next 3 or 4 hours on it. That's just a brief synopsis.
Okay.
Islam's a mess.
Yes.
The end.
Thomas Hall said, awe would be a better word, the beginning word for being in the presence of holiness. I would say definitely awe would be there. I think it might go to another extent, maybe like standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, where there is some
fear,
wonder
of
of majesty, but there is some of that too as well. Jinn would be like fairies, spirits neither holy or demonic, but somewhere in between, like the spiritual equivalent of animals.
Yeah, that's where you get it. It's sort of in between, and it's not really clear necessarily if they're good or not. And it's very pagan in its concepts. I remember use TikTok as an example, watching a video on TikTok of a Muslim who's on there. He's honestly saying this: you cannot put hot water down the sink. Never, ever, ever put boiling water down the sink. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, okay, so you might damage the pipes or something like that. He said, no, what it does is it hurts the jinn. And a man was possessed by a jinn because he poured boiling water down and it killed the jinn's children. So whenever you need to pour hot water down a drain, you turn on the cold water, so then you pour the hot water in with the cold water, so then the jinn aren't hurt. But it is just the concept of these jinn are everywhere, and they are powerful beings. And it's just so alien to Christianity or Judaism, and it's very clearly from the pagan roots, where you have, yes, fairies would be a great example in the northern of being parallels to jinn.
Okay. And so I think this is probably a good example here too. He says somewhere between like the spiritual equivalent of animals, which would be not morally good or bad.
Sort of, because you have, at the same time, you do have jinn that are saved, according to Islam. You have jinn that are Muslim. And again, the sun is a Muslim too. So
is that
is
rather strange. So when you get down to it, the Bible gives us two explanations for spiritist phenomena. They are produced by deceptive manipulations, as has been proved, or two, they are produced by lying spirits. We are to focus on Jesus and what's above and not get wrapped up into the occult or spiritism or anything like that. Either trying to manipulate things through incantations or trying to, if I do certain things a certain way, like pouring hot water down a drain, we're not supposed to use that as a way of manipulation or to be pulled in by fascination, abject fascination, and then get all wrapped up in the spooky stuff, like spend, playing hours on end with Ouija boards or something like that. Jesus sent out his disciples with authority to heal the sick and cast out demons. Luke 10:17-20 tells us, the 70 who returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, but that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And that's where our focus is to be. Focus on him, not on any of this other stuff that happens. This is very minor. This is a distraction at best. This cup banging on the table. That's not where our focus is. Our focus is on Christ. So coming up next Thursday, we have
dun, dun, dun,
dun, dun, dun, if I can find it. Yes, right here. Are they real? Talking the same thing, basically. What does the Bible say about aliens? And we'll have an open discussion about that as well. But this will be at the 8 a.m. portion. So I know that doesn't mix with everybody's time. This is what we're doing in the evening and in the morning and seeing what happens with that. See which the best time it is. So don't forget also next Thursday, we're looking at our first ever movie after party. This will be the Martian after party review. If you get a chance, watch the movie and we'll review it together. I want to see what you have to say about the movie. And what Christian themes that you see, we can pull them out together and dissect it together as brothers and sisters. So until then, thank you so much for joining us. I love these interactive sessions, and we'll see you next time.